Hello and welcome everyone. I have distinct pleasure of having my mentor, Dr. Roger Jahnke, with me. And I'm going to address a very tough question for him today to see how he can help us out with. We always talk about in coaching that, we want to have are you ready to change? That's one of the things that we always ask for. Are you ready to change? If you're more ready to change, you will change. But often enough, we have seen that there is resistance to change. I don't want to change. There may be something about the change that's not so good about. What is the reason why people are resistant to change? Roger.
Yes, what a beautiful question and how common it is. And I'm glad we're going to be talking about it just briefly. So the first thing is that habits, we are creatures of habit. And so when the solution to what we want to achieve in our life is to make some kind of a change, there's a part of us that's enthusiastic and excited about the possibility. But then the other thing that shows up is, but I already have carved out how I do my life. And so as much as I may be enthusiastic about the possibility of the benefits that would arise from making a change, I'm also resistant and have my my daily patterns. We have this phrase that says, try to teach an old dog new tricks.
Right.
And just like, how old is the dog? Well, if the dog is anywhere past 9 years old,
Right.
we're already in the business of having to make some major investigation
Right.
personally in terms of like how high is our motivation. So now it's a trade-off between
I see.
imagination and actual real motivation. There's a second thing that is the weight on the shall we say, achieving our intentions and fulfilling our goals, and that has to do with our naivete in establishing what it is we're going to try to achieve.
Hmm.
And so typically, when we arrange a, shall we say, I'm going to call it a holistic life planning experience, when we
Right.
arrange for a personal holistic life planning experience, planning is very different than implementing. So it's easy to, shall we say, have a big plan and then run into what we were just talking about a moment ago, the inertia that arises when we confront our favorite patterns of behavior. And so the solution in the kind of holistic life planning coaching that we are inclined to through the circle of life side of paradigm, if you will, for coaching, is we don't start with goals. We go to intentions. Now, what is the intention that I have? Then I make a goal. But actually, we even go previous to intention to something that might be called our life purpose. You can imagine, some kind of a story about how you got here, whether you think it's your parents' fault that you got here, or that you are in some kind of relationship with a higher order of intelligence, call it the divine intelligence. Maybe you had something to fulfill, or maybe divine intelligence assigned you something to fulfill, or maybe you just learned how to proceed in life from being around the people that you grew up with, that is your parents.
Right.
All of those are, shall we say, elements to this discussion. And if we take this to the highest level of, just call it divine purpose or soul purpose, then if I have a goal that's associated with an intention that's derived from my soul's purpose,
Right.
it's very different than if I have a goal or an intention that's derived from social pressure,
Right. Right.
or ideas that I've gained from people who don't even know what they're doing.
Right.
call that your parents or your social group.
Interesting. Interesting.
So if we can link this back to a process where not yesterday, not today, maybe not even in the next year, but eventually through consideration and focus, we can actually reach some conclusions about what our highest level of sense of purpose for being in this life is, and then establish an intention associated with that, and then break that down to one goal that's associated with that intention. You can just see how the power of, let's just call it some higher force, how the power of higher forces can be present in the goal. But then what we're going to do is we're going to take that goal and break it down into 100 or even 1,000 tiny little pieces. So now if we go back to the question of the challenge of change, and I could make it as small as this. There's a pen on the table over here. So I wasn't going to pick up that pen, but now I've decided I'm going to change it. I'm going to pick up that pen. Well, I just won that game.
Right.
What else is there? Okay, well, maybe just say for fun that instead of brushing my teeth with my dominant hand, I'm going to brush my teeth with my non-dominant hand. Good. And I'm going to stumble around and it's not going to feel right. But then eventually it's pretty simple. I do it once or twice a day. I can convince myself, if I can convince myself to use my non-dominant hand, then okay, another win. What's in my coffee cup? Have I decided that it would be better for me to drink some herbal tea as opposed to coffee? Could I try it once? Or could I put a glass of water near where I'm sitting so that instead of having to hike to get water, I can have water right with me? These are all little tiny changes.
Yeah.
That then, shall we say, orchestrate a atmosphere of winning. I did it. I did it. I did it.
Yeah. So, Roger, an interesting, fascinating process that you outline, and back going inwards is life purpose, how strong that is, and it comes to intention, and then intention gets into the goal. The goal is set up, but then manifestation is by small changes, not huge changes. And this is very interesting because biologically, I just want to add something to our discussion, and this is something very interesting. Body and mind and entire system is designed for protection. And there's a little change in anything. There's signals go all over the place. Hey, what's happening? What's happening? It could be in the body level, the mind level, and all of a sudden there's panic that can come. Yes. And so until and unless that comes from the middle brain, as we know, middle brain to the lower brain, but then the cortex, like what you described, what that thinks about saying, what's my purpose, what's the intention, that all comes from the higher level, that can line up and say, listen, this is safe, it's okay. So the zones we describe typically when taught to us is about green zone and yellow zone, and how you remain within that framework to go step at a time. Am I on the right track here?
Absolutely. In some future conversation, we can look at some of the other ancillary features, because there's so many things that come to bear when we're thinking about the whole, shall we say, circle of our lives.
Right.
But this question for today is like very core to, moving into the zone of winning and letting small wins, a bunch of small wins,
small wins, and celebrating it so that we enjoy the journey.
Maybe bringing good friends.
Why
not have a little sangha or peer group that you actually say, I'm going to make a goal or an action step, and then I'm going to actually tell somebody.
Declare it.
that's another whole conversation.
conversation. So Roger, you mentioned circular life. I'm going to finish this with people who are watching this, that, you and Rebecca, your wife, set up your circular life coaching program for decades. It's like 1980s you started this process. And so it's been mature enough to really, really recognize its value. And anyone is looking at this video, please go to Circular Life Coach Institute, and we'll be putting a link, etc. on it. But Roger, thank you very much for today's wonderful summation of a very difficult question.
Thank you, everybody.
So,
Well, take care.